Dream League Soccer even worth playing in 2023? Well, this guy definitely doesn't think so. But what about everyone else? Is playing Dream League Soccer for that precious rush of excitement worth your time, or can that void be filled with something else? So in this video, we're going to be looking at what I think is good about Dream League Soccer 2023, but more importantly, what I think is bad about Dream League Soccer 2023. And I know what you guys might be thinking. NoLifeJeff, you make Dream League Soccer content, you're going to be super biased towards Dream League Soccer. And you'd be right. Just not for this video. So let's get started, and we're going to start out with something simple. Dream League Soccer is a sports video game where you play football matches against computers and other players, which is a concept that works well. There's a reason why EA made $7.4 billion last year. But obviously, there are other factors to consider, especially considering it is a mobile game. Are the controls smooth and easy to understand? Yes. The control stick is very receptive, maybe a little less on smaller devices, but that's understandable. There are also only 3 buttons that all do different kinds of passes or shots, making it very easy to understand. But where things start to not look so good for Dream League Soccer is everything else. For starters, your players get extremely tired towards the end of the game, which can completely ruin the experience. If you can barely move your players to make passes or run back to make tackles because they are so tired, the experience is just naturally worse. Now, you could always get good or put on subs near the end of the game, but you only get 5 subs, and even if you are good enough to play with low stamina, it still doesn't change how frustrating the game becomes. And you know what else is frustrating? Playing against long through passes, long shots, and passing around the back. 3 things any decent Dream League Soccer player can just exploit. Nevertheless, Dream League Soccer does have something going in the gameplay aspect because football itself is an established sport that people like playing. So clearly people like football games that simulate the game for real, especially for people like me who are no good in real life. Dream League Soccer offers many different types of gameplay. There's career mode, online divisions, cup events, real team events, scenarios, and exhibition, which help keep the game fresh and somewhat exciting. But it is the gameplay itself that does need a little bit of work if it is going to be truly worth your time for everyone. So now that I've said everything I wanted to say about gameplay, let's move on to rewards and progression, something that is also very important for mobile games. In Dream League Soccer, I do find that at times progression is certainly slow. The average number of coins you get in a day ultimately depends on what division you're in, what's your stadium bonus, and whether or not you decide to double your coins at the end of a match. This basically makes progression at the beginning of the game really slow, and then it picks up as you play the game, as you rank up the divisions and upgrade your stadium, which I find pretty weird because usually in games you progress really quick at the beginning and then slow down as you play, which is the opposite of Dream League Soccer. However, what throws a huge wrench in the natural progression system is events, because they're unpredictable. Events are available to everyone after playing 15 career mode matches, and the rewards you get are really big for new players. This basically makes it so that the majority of your progression comes from playing events and not the intended story mode, which I find strange. When you then include winning events in your progression, then it becomes like a normal game where you progress faster at the beginning and then it sort of slows off as you continue progressing. But then that creates a huge barrier for new players because it's unlikely that they will thrive in events if they're just starting out the game, because you have to be good to win events. I feel as if players would rather be rewarded in how much they play rather than how good they are, especially for new players. It rewards dedication. Now, I do understand that rewarding good players for winning should be a thing, but forcing it on players just doesn't seem right. You basically cannot progress if you can't win events. It's very, very hard. I think that legendary agents should be available for completing larger challenges, and then maybe legendary coaches would be available from winning events to reward the good players. Now, with all that being said, if we do assume that new players can consistently win events, then I would say the progression system is actually fine. In the Dream League Soccer progression system, you can get legendary players from winning events, which then upgrade your team, then build up enough coins from completing daily challenges, season pass, as well as events. You could then use those coins to upgrade the stadium and play through career mode, eventually getting enough coins to buy legendary players in the transfer market as you upgrade your team. You get nice early fast progression near the beginning, but where progression gets a lot slower is coaching. Coaches cost lots of gems. Gems are really hard to get, and you need lots of coaches to max your team. But I am okay with this, because progression is expected to be slower as you progress, and many games do take a long time to finish and get a max team for everything. Why should Dream League Soccer be the exception, right? The only thing that truly matters in games that have slow progression is whether or not having a max team gives the player so much of an advantage where it is basically impossible to win without one. And I think we all know that is not the case. Skill is definitely a factor in the game online, and you in no way need a max team to be career mode. It's actually really easy. You can probably do it with a common team. What I think distorts a lot of players' perspective about the game's progression, and I don't blame them, is the constant nerfs that are never mentioned by First Touch Games. The two main examples of these nerfs that were really obvious was changing legendary coaches to rare coaches when releasing a legendary player, and every single coach getting a nerf. Legendary coaches went from upgrading a total of 60 stats all the way down to 27, decreasing their effectiveness by more than half. These two changes alone increased the total cost of a max team to be more than double, and increased the total time to max it free to play. Now, I do appreciate that First Touch Games have tried to offset these changes by implementing the daily challenge rewards and scenarios to get extra rewards, but it is clear that progression was infinitely easier when the game first came out. I really do think that if Dream League Soccer started out this way, maybe it would be okay. It's not supposed to take only a couple months to max an entire team free to play. That's just not how free games work. But it's the fact that they just took progression away from us, creating a harder experience for newer players compared to original players, that makes us upset at the game. And the fact that these changes were just never really documented and sort of just implemented under our nose, that doesn't create a really good look. Ever since they nerfed all the coaches to increase your stats less, it takes you 80 common coaches to upgrade one max player. That's insane. Okay, so we've covered both gameplay and progression, the two biggest aspects of the game. And if you can get past the long through balls, bad defenders, and passing around the back online, or you just want to play career mode, then the gameplay's great. That, along if you can win the majority of events and forget about how the progression worked before, then progression is also great. Dream League Soccer 2023 is worth playing for lots of people out there because it's a football video game and you can sign your favorite players. What's not to like? Well, I can tell you what's not to like. No surprise, but this game has more problems spanning more than gameplay and progression, and that's what I'm going to be talking about for the rest of the video. For instance, Dream League Soccer doesn't have all the professional football players and teams due to licensing. The most notable league that is not in the game is Bundesliga. Bundesliga teams like Bayern Munich are not in the legendary division, and players who play in Bundesliga and don't play for another national team are just not in the game. Players like Neuer, Muller, and Kimmich are just nowhere to be found. So if you want to play a mobile soccer game with your favorite player in it, but he's in the Bundesliga, well, we can't do it. I'll tell you that Dream League Soccer's not worth it then. Then every update we see upgrades and downgrades, which makes sense because ratings reflect real life football, except the way they are handled just doesn't seem quite right. Now, I do understand that there is player development, and if players are upgraded or downgraded, then which stats do you change? We don't actually know. So the players on your team just remain unchanged, while every other player that's not on your team does change on the transfer market. And all this does is create a disadvantage for a new player. For example, I still have 99 Messi because he was 89 overall in Dream League Soccer 2020, but if someone were to start playing the game today, they could only get him to 96, and that's just unfair. Why would you start playing Dream League Soccer when you know you're going in with a disadvantage against other players? Then if you don't like gacha games, well, Dream League Soccer has some of those mechanics in the game as well. Now, I know that every mobile game has gacha mechanics because they have to make money somehow, and it's actually not that bad in Dream League Soccer, but they're still there. It's a mobile game. Some of the gacha mechanics include only having 9 available players in the transfer market, making you either scout or keep playing to find more players. Then there is obviously the specially developed players where you spend a whole bunch of gems for a chance at an upgraded legendary player, when you'll most likely get a common player, knowing my luck. Or your luck, I guess. If you don't like things like that, well, it's not worth it. Go spend $100 on console FIFA and you don't have to worry about it. How about when you beat the game? The whole appeal of Dream League Soccer is career mode, which I think is pretty good. Maybe a little bit too easy for my liking, but still good. But what happens when you beat career mode, max your team, and win Division 1? What's there left to do? Oh, I know, why don't I collect and upgrade every single legendary player? That will be fun. Oh, but wait, you can only hold 40 players on your team. Darn it. And finally, to top it all off, Dream League Soccer only gets updates twice a year. Since sports games can't really do much to update their gameplay every year, since the sport doesn't really change, they update the game by releasing special versions of player cards frequently and maybe a new game mode every other year. Dream League Soccer does have the solid update every year, but without the frequent content updates with new cards or even special events, the game gets stale after a while. The excitement of an update usually only last a few days, so games need to be constantly updating content to keep the game fresh. The only fresh, frequent content that Dream League Soccer has are events, but they're all the same. It's no longer this special thing. All it is just another frustrating way to grind for progression. There are definitely things that Dream League Soccer is missing, but no game is perfect. So with everything that I said in this video, is Dream League Soccer 2023 worth your time? Now, that is an extremely tough question to answer considering what I said in this video, but I do in fact think that it is still worth it. I think playing through career mode with a starter team and seeing it get upgraded, all while progressing through the divisions, eventually beating the game, is fun, and you don't get that experience on any other free mobile football game. There is still that uniqueness in Dream League Soccer that makes it worth playing over other games. But every player has their preference, and some of the game's flaws might just be too much, and that's completely understandable. If you like the game of soccer or football and you want to play it on your phone, then Dream League Soccer is a good choice. But maybe it's best for everyone, including myself, to go touch some grass and play the game for real instead.